In the labyrinth of human emotions, we often find ourselves entangled in the pursuit of love. Yet, what if this yearning is not for love itself, but for something else entirely? We seek validation, a reflection of our worth through the eyes of others. This quest, though seemingly innocent, can lead us astray, for it is not love we desire, but the affirmation of our existence. Our unconscious mind, a vast reservoir of repressed desires and unresolved conflicts, often directs us towards relationships that mirror our inner turmoil. These connections, while intense, may not be expressions of love, but projections of our unmet needs. In Jungian terms, this is the realm of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny or fail to acknowledge. When we fail to integrate these aspects, we seek external validation to fill the void within. Moreover, the anima and animus, our inner feminine and masculine archetypes, play a pivotal role in our relationships. They shape our perceptions and expectations of love, often leading us to seek partners who embody these unconscious ideals. The process of individuation, the journey towards self-realization, requires us to confront these inner dynamics. Only through self-awareness and integration can we transcend the need for validation and experience authentic love. In the intricate theater of the human psyche, we often mistake the echo of our own desires for the voice of love. We pursue it with fervor, as if its presence could fill the hollow spaces within us, yet the truth is far more subtle and infinitely more profound. What we often call love is not love at all, but a yearning for recognition, an unconscious plea to be seen, accepted, and validated by another. The heart reaches outward not because it seeks union, but because it has not yet recognized the depths within itself. This misdirection of energy creates a web of illusions, in which each human being becomes both prisoner and warden of their own unmet longing. The mind constructs symbols and fantasies that cloak desire in the guise of romance, passion, or devotion. We are drawn to others not merely for who they are, but for what they represent, mirrors reflecting the qualities we hope to find in ourselves, the reassurance that we are worthy of attention and care. These projections, while potent and intoxicating, are not authentic connections. They are the shadows of our own psyche, taking shape in another, an attempt to complete a self that has yet to acknowledge its own wholeness. In this way, the illusions we call love are in essence a dance with the hidden recesses of our own being. In seeking love externally, we often bypass the internal journey that true intimacy demands. We may mistake attraction, admiration, or dependence for affection, and in doing so, we externalize the responsibility for our own sense of worth. We look to others to confirm that we are lovable, rather than cultivating that affirmation from within. The danger in this is subtle yet profound. When we seek ourselves in the eyes of another, we surrender the power of self-recognition, and we place our emotional equilibrium at the mercy of forces beyond our control. The heart becomes fragile, contingent, and restless, perpetually oscillating between hope and disappointment. The shadow, that neglected portion of the psyche, plays a crucial role in this illusion. Within each person lies the unacknowledged self, the fears, desires, and insecurities that society, family, and habit have taught us to repress. When we seek love without awareness of this shadow, we unconsciously draw toward relationships that reflect its contours. We are drawn to those who will trigger, satisfy, or confirm the hidden aspects of ourselves, often repeating patterns of longing and disillusionment. The desire for external validation becomes inseparable from the desire for connection, and the line between love and self-deception grows increasingly blurred. Authentic love, in contrast, arises only when the journey inward has begun. It is not a passive reception of approval, nor is it dependent upon the acknowledgement of others. It requires the courage to confront one's own fears, to meet the shadow without judgment, and to embrace the entirety of one's being. In this encounter with the self, we discover that love is not an external commodity to be sought, but a state of integration, of wholeness, of recognition of the intrinsic value of one's own soul. Only then can we engage with others in a manner that is genuine, unburdened by unconscious need, and free from the illusions that once dictated our desires. The illusion of love is, therefore, a mirror held before the psyche, reflecting what has yet to be acknowledged within. It is a teacher, a provocateur, a summons to self-examination. The heart's longing is not misdirected in its essence, but it is often misinformed by ignorance of the self. By turning inward, by illuminating the shadow, and by cultivating self-awareness, one can transform the illusions that once masqueraded as love into the authentic experience of connection and care. Love, then, is no longer a craving or a demand. It becomes a natural unfolding of the soul, a dialogue of equals, and a reflection of inner completeness rather than outer affirmation. In recognizing this truth, one understands that the illusions were never enemies, but guides, heralds that beckon us toward the profound realization that what we truly seek has always been within. Love ceases to be a quest for validation and becomes, instead, the harmonious resonance of two whole beings meeting not in need, but in recognition. The heart finally rests not in the possession of another, but in the possession of itself. Within the human psyche there exists a realm often unvisited, a territory both feared and misunderstood, yet essential to the wholeness of the self. This is the domain of the shadow, that part of our being which harbors the impulses, desires, and traits we refuse to acknowledge consciously. It is not evil in itself, nor is it a mere repository of faults. Rather, it is the neglected half of our nature, the counterbalance to the persona we present to the world. In the pursuit of what we call love or connection, the shadow exerts a silent influence, shaping our attractions, repulsions, and even the choices we believe are freely made. To deny it is to live in partial blindness, to allow our unconscious to dictate the terms of our experience, often with tragic subtlety. The shadow emerges most vividly in our relationships. When we are drawn to another, it is rarely to meet a fully separate being, but to encounter reflections of our own unconscious. Those qualities in others that provoke intense attraction or aversion frequently mirror aspects of ourselves we have repressed or denied. The beloved becomes a canvas, painted not with their own essence alone, but with the projections of our unexamined psyche. In this way, the shadow orchestrates a drama in which we are both actor and audience, compelled toward encounters that illuminate what has been hidden, yet often resisted with equal intensity. In the realm of desire, the shadow is particularly insistent. The qualities we devalue in ourselves, ambition, sensuality, jealousy, anger, vulnerability, are often those we seek or fear in another. We may be unconsciously drawn to partners who awaken these traits, or repelled by them in ways that seem illogical. The unconscious mind is not bound by reason, it acts through instinct and symbolism. Thus, our relationships become laboratories in which the shadow experiments, testing our willingness to confront the truths we avoid. Without awareness of its influence, we may mistake these encounters for love, when in reality they are invitations to integration, subtle urgings to meet the parts of ourselves we have abandoned. To engage with the shadow is to embark upon a path both demanding and liberating. It requires courage, for the shadow carries within it the qualities we have learned to fear or despise. To acknowledge it is to recognize that the capacity for darkness and light resides in equal measure within every soul. Yet only through this recognition can one begin to disentangle the illusions projected onto others, to move beyond the endless cycles of attraction and rejection that plague the unexamined heart. By embracing the shadow, we reclaim energies once denied, transforming them from forces of unconscious disruption into sources of creativity, vitality, and authentic connection. The shadow also serves as a guardian of wholeness. Its emergence is not punishment, nor is it a sign of moral failing. It is the psyche's mechanism for balance, insisting that nothing be ignored indefinitely without consequence. In relationships, its presence manifests as tension, conflict, or repeated patterns, each a summons to look inward. Those who evade this call find themselves trapped in recurrent disappointments, mistaking the dissatisfaction for external deficiency rather than inner incompleteness. Awareness of the shadow, by contrast, allows one to engage with others more consciously, responding from an integrated self rather than from the reactive impulses of a fragmented psyche. Integration of the shadow does not imply its eradication or suppression. On the contrary, it requires recognition, acceptance, and dialogue. To know the shadow is to gain access to the deeper currents of one's own nature, to comprehend the hidden motivations behind desire, fear, and attachment. In this engagement, one discovers that what once appeared as threat or shame is also a source of insight and power. The shadow, when acknowledged, becomes a teacher, revealing the unconscious patterns that shape behavior and guiding the seeker toward genuine self-understanding. In matters of love and human connection, the shadow is thus both mirror and guide. It exposes the illusions we carry, the projections that distort perception, and the unconscious needs that masquerade as affection. It calls us to honesty, to courage, and to the unflinching examination of our own inner landscape. Only when we confront it can we approach others with clarity, compassion, and authenticity, liberated from the compulsions that arise from unacknowledged parts of the self. In this encounter, the shadow ceases to be a source of fear and becomes a vital companion on the journey toward wholeness, illuminating the path to relationships founded not on projection, but on genuine recognition and understanding. The shadow, then, is indispensable to the human experience. It is the hidden counterpart that shapes the visible self, the silent force behind desire, and the secret teacher of self-awareness. To know it, to meet it without fear, is to step into the fullness of life itself, to grasp the profound truth that the deepest connections, whether with self or others, emerge only from integration, acceptance, and the unflinching illumination of what has long been concealed. Within every human soul exists a dialogue that often goes unnoticed, a conversation between complementary forces that shape thought, feeling, and desire. These forces, invisible yet powerful, are not mere metaphors but archetypal realities embedded within the unconscious. In the depths of the psyche, the masculine and feminine aspects coexist, irrespective of one's biological sex, influencing the manner in which we perceive the world and relate to others. The anima and animus, as these aspects are known, are not passive shadows but active agents of inner life, guiding our choices, our affections, and the unconscious narratives we enact in the realm of relationships. To ignore their presence is to wander blindly in the labyrinth of human interaction, mistaking projection for understanding and desire for reality. The anima, the feminine principle within the male psyche, often manifests as intuition, receptivity, and emotional depth. It embodies the qualities traditionally associated with nurturing and sensitivity, yet it can also appear as mystery, unpredictability, and the power to confront the conscious ego with truths it would rather avoid. The animus, conversely, represents the masculine principle within the female psyche, expressing itself through logic, decisiveness, and assertive energy, while also carrying the potential for rigidity, judgment, or domination if left unrecognized. Each functions not merely as a counterpart to conscious identity, but as a bridge to the unconscious, inviting the individual to explore the hidden dimensions of self and to encounter qualities that have been neglected, suppressed, or projected onto others. In the theater of relationships, the anima and animus often take the form of projection. One is drawn to others not simply for who they are, but for the qualities they symbolize in the unconscious. A man may fall in love with a woman because she embodies the essence of his anima, revealing the depths of feeling, intuition, or creativity he has yet to integrate. A woman may be attracted to a man who reflects her animus, mirroring decisiveness, authority, or strength she has denied within herself. These projections, while compelling, are rarely accurate reflections of the other's true nature. Rather, they are invitations to recognize the unacknowledged dimensions of one's own psyche. The danger lies in mistaking the projection for reality, loving an image rather than a person, and in doing so, perpetuating patterns that obscure genuine intimacy. The anima and animus are not static. They evolve through the process of individuation, which requires the conscious mind to engage with the unconscious in an ongoing dialogue. Through dreams, fantasies, and emotional reactions, they communicate, offering insights into the inner life and revealing the aspects of self that demand attention. A man who understands the messages of his anima may develop emotional intelligence, empathy, and creative vision. A woman who recognizes the guidance of her animus may cultivate assertiveness, discernment, and inner authority. When these archetypes are integrated, they no longer require projection onto others to be experienced. They become living dimensions of one's own consciousness, enhancing the capacity for authentic relationships, self-expression, and creativity. Failure to acknowledge these inner figures often results in conflict, dissatisfaction, or repetitive patterns in love and human connection. Unrecognized, they compel the individual to seek outside what must first be found within, generating illusions of need and dependence. The anima or animus may appear in a partner as idealization, obsession, or resentment, each a reflection of the unexamined expectations and desires that originate within the psyche. In this sense, every encounter with the opposite sex, or even with the same sex in aspects of inner life, is a rehearsal for understanding, integration, and the emergence of a balanced self. To engage consciously with the anima and animus is to undertake an intimate journey into the unknown territories of the soul. It is to recognize that attraction, passion, and conflict are not merely interpersonal dramas, but mirrors of inner dynamics demanding attention and integration. This engagement requires humility, patience, and courage, for the unconscious often resists illumination, presenting shadows and contradictions that challenge the ego's assumptions. Yet, in embracing these archetypal forces, the individual transforms projections into insight, longing into self-knowledge, and desire into authentic connection. In the final analysis, the anima and animus are not obstacles or threats. They are guides, essential companions on the path to wholeness. Through their recognition, one gains access to the richness of the unconscious, cultivates self-awareness, and learns to relate to others with clarity and compassion. They teach that love, attraction, and relationship are not solely external experiences, but reflections of an inner harmony that must first be achieved. Only by integrating these archetypal forces can one encounter life with depth, authenticity, and the profound understanding that the true dialogue of the soul begins within. The journey of the psyche is rarely linear, and its true purpose is seldom immediately apparent to the conscious mind. Life presents itself in a series of experiences, encounters, and challenges. Yet behind this apparent randomness lies a deeper pattern, a subtle urging toward wholeness that transcends the ordinary motions of daily existence. This process, imperceptible at first, unfolds gradually as the individual begins to confront the complexities of their inner world, recognizing that the self is not a singular, static entity, but a living, evolving totality composed of conscious awareness and the vast unconscious that lies beneath. To engage fully with this process is to embark upon a voyage of transformation, one in which the ego is neither destroyed nor elevated, but harmonized within a larger framework of psychic reality. At the heart of this endeavor is the recognition of the unconscious, not merely as a repository of repressed desires or forgotten memories, but as a dynamic wellspring of insight, creativity, and guidance. The psyche speaks through symbols, dreams, and spontaneous affect, offering intimations of truths that cannot be grasped solely through rational thought. To ignore these communications is to stagnate, to remain trapped in habitual patterns that are dictated by partial awareness rather than the full spectrum of being. Yet to heed them is to confront the self in its entirety, to acknowledge both the luminous and shadowed aspects of personality, and to accept that inner conflict is not an impediment but a necessary catalyst for growth. In this transformative journey, the individual gradually encounters the shadow, the parts of themselves that have been denied or suppressed. This confrontation is seldom comfortable. The ego resists the intrusion of impulses and traits that it has long disowned. Yet it is precisely in this engagement that the foundations for true wholeness are laid. By recognizing the shadow, the psyche achieves a delicate balance, integrating the repressed energies and impulses into a conscious framework. This integration is not a moral or aesthetic exercise, but an acknowledgement that the self, in its completeness, encompasses all facets of existence: the tender, the fierce, the rational, and the instinctual. Alongside the shadow, the process also requires attention to the archetypal dimensions of the psyche. The anima and animus, the guiding figures of inner femininity and masculinity, emerge as mediators between consciousness and the unconscious, illuminating the qualities that must be reconciled within. Dreams and visions frequently present themselves as symbolic narratives, offering guidance, warning, or encouragement. They demand reflection, interpretation, and the willingness to act upon their insights, for they are the language of the self speaking in forms beyond ordinary comprehension. To neglect these signals is to deny the psyche's inherent wisdom, while to embrace them is to step more fully into the rhythm of one's own becoming. The path toward wholeness is not a solitary abstraction, but a lived reality that manifests in relationships, work, and creative expression. Interpersonal experiences become mirrors in which the self is reflected and tested. Conflicts, attractions, and challenges are not external impositions but invitations to recognize projections, uncover hidden motives, and cultivate empathy for both self and other. By observing one's responses, one gradually learns to discern the unconscious influences shaping behavior, transforming reactive patterns into conscious choice. In this way, the journey of individuation is inseparable from the life one lives, for it is expressed not in withdrawal from the world, but in the conscious engagement with it. A critical element of this process is the emergence of the self, the central archetype representing the totality of the psyche. The self is not an ideal to be attained in the conventional sense, but a reality to be realized through the integration of conscious and unconscious elements. It represents the harmonization of opposites, the reconciliation of inner conflicts, and the alignment of one's life with the deeper currents of psychic destiny. As the self becomes more manifest, the individual experiences a profound sense of inner cohesion, a deepened capacity for authenticity, and an ability to relate to others and the world with clarity and compassion. Ultimately, the journey of individuation is a lifelong endeavor, an unfolding that cannot be rushed or circumvented. It calls for courage, patience, and unwavering attention to the voice of the psyche in all its manifestations. It is both the confrontation with the self's darkness and the discovery of its luminous potential, the reconciliation of opposites and the flowering of creativity, insight, and wisdom. To walk this path is to awaken to the fullness of one's being, to recognize that the journey itself is the destination, and that wholeness is achieved not in the denial of complexity, but in its conscious embrace. Human relationships are often approached as though they were simple exchanges, transactions of affection or admiration, yet beneath this apparent simplicity lies a complex interplay of conscious and unconscious forces. Many seek connection not as an encounter between two whole beings, but as a means to satisfy unrecognized needs, to fill voids that exist within themselves. When the heart reaches outward for reassurance or validation, it is seldom the other person who is truly desired. Rather, it is the reflection of one's own worth that is sought. This dynamic gives rise to bonds that are fragile, dependent, and easily disturbed, for they rest upon illusion rather than the foundation of self-awareness and integration. True connection, by contrast, emerges when the psyche has undergone a process of recognition, when one encounters another without projection, expectation, or the compulsion to be confirmed. The unconscious plays a constant role in shaping relationships. Every attraction, every tension, and every moment of intimacy carries within it echoes of the shadow, of unresolved conflicts, and of archetypal patterns that govern human behavior. When these forces remain unacknowledged, they manifest as projections upon the other, coloring perception with desires, fears, and ideals that are not truly theirs. The beloved may appear flawless or threatening, saintly or monstrous, not because of intrinsic qualities, but because the unconscious self has cast its image upon them. It is only through conscious awareness of these dynamics that the illusion dissolves, allowing the true character of the other to emerge, and permitting an encounter that is genuine rather than distorted. The anima and animus within each individual further complicate the nature of connection. These inner figures influence the ways in which one perceives and responds to others, shaping expectations, ideals, and desires. To the degree that these archetypal presences are projected outward, relationships become stages for the enactment of unconscious scripts. One loves not the person, but the image they have projected. One is angered not by their behavior alone, but by the unrecognized shadows that they awaken within. Integration of these inner dimensions, however, allows the individual to respond with clarity, to recognize the other as separate, autonomous, and complete, and to engage in a relationship that honors both the self and the other in their wholeness. Authentic connection requires courage, for it involves the willingness to be vulnerable, to encounter another without the protective barriers of expectation or manipulation. It demands that one observe impulses, fears, and attachments without being dominated by them, and that one communicate from a place of presence rather than desire for control or approval. In such encounters, love is not a currency exchanged, but an emergent property of two conscious beings who recognize the mutuality of existence. This presence, rooted in awareness rather than need, creates a resonance between individuals that is neither possessive nor dependent, but reflective of an inner integrity that has been cultivated through the lifelong engagement with the self. The shadow, when unacknowledged, often sabotages the potential for authentic connection. Jealousy, fear, projection, and the compulsive need for validation obscure the face of the other and transform intimacy into a theater of egoic desires. Yet, when the shadow is recognized, its energies can be harnessed constructively, revealing not only personal vulnerabilities but also capacities for empathy, patience, and insight. In this way, the obstacles that once seemed insurmountable become teachers, guiding the individual toward a more conscious and liberated engagement with others. To encounter another authentically is to recognize both similarities and differences without the compulsion to absorb or alter them. It is to honor the separateness of the other while maintaining the integrity of one's own inner life. In such relationships, dialogue replaces judgment, observation replaces projection, and the shared experience of being becomes more profound than any attempt to mold or control. Authentic connection, therefore, is not found in dependency or in the fulfillment of desire alone, but in the recognition of wholeness, of self, of other, and of the interplay that emerges when two conscious beings meet without artifice. Ultimately, genuine connection is an extension of the journey toward individuation. As one integrates the shadow, recognizes the anima or animus, and cultivates self-awareness, the capacity to relate authentically grows. Relationships become mirrors not for need, but for understanding, spaces not for compensation, but for reflection, and encounters not for gratification, but for recognition. In this light, connection is not merely an external phenomenon, but a manifestation of inner harmony, a dance between selves who have embraced the complexity of their own nature, and, in doing so, have discovered the possibility of meeting others in their true essence. Authentic connection, therefore, is both rare and transformative. It demands patience, courage, and the continual presence of the self in its wholeness. It is the meeting of consciousness with consciousness, unclouded by projection, need, or illusion, a place where the self is reflected, not as an object of desire, but as a companion in the shared journey toward wholeness. True love is not a commodity to be acquired, but a state of being to be realized. It emerges when we cease seeking validation and begin to validate ourselves. In this self-affirmation, we find the capacity to love others not for what they provide us, but for who they are. Therefore, let us embark on the journey inward, for it is only by knowing ourselves that we can truly know love.